welcome for the second episode of the series Small Talk Big Ideas that TEDxULB is hosting. Today we'll be receiving our second speaker, which is Murielle Machiels, one of the academic directors of Solvay Brussels School. And the idea for today is that we'll be talking about this period before COVID and after COVID, how you have been experiencing it so far, but also how you're maybe tips and tricks or how you're actually planning on apprehending what's coming up next.
Okay, so my name is Murielle. I'm an academic director at Solvay Brussels School for an online program that is called Leading Authentically in Digital Times. So it's a program for leaders, and it's also part of the MBA of Solvay. And in fact, this program is based a little bit or a lot on my experience, because next to that program, I also started a company called QiLeader. And with that company, I help leaders reinvent themselves and become more human, have more meaningful lives. And also I help organizations change their culture. And how did I come to that? I was a CEO myself a couple of years ago of a media company that was in the midst of a digital transformation. And we were all working really hard, myself included, and it still wasn't enough to deliver the results we wanted to deliver. And we were also afraid to be disrupted because our sector was starting to be digitalized. There were a lot of new players, so we had to go fast, we had to increase profits, and we had to do a lot of things. And when I started, I used the techniques that I had learned in school and in my early career. And those techniques, they worked very well in the past, but today in the fast changing digital times, they weren't delivering the results I wanted anymore. And so we ended up working really hard, being a lot in meetings, going from one meeting to the next one, trying to align instead of doing our own jobs. We had a lot of decisions that weren't fast enough, or we had to wait for decisions, or sometimes stupid decisions were imposed on us. And to compensate, I was working hard and I started sacrificing a lot of things. Time for myself, for my family, and also exercising, sometimes sleep, and not only me, of course, but the rest of the organization. And at some point, I realized I couldn't continue like this. And I found myself at a crossroads. I could really feel like if I continue like this, working hard and hard, I would burn out. I felt it. I had already friends telling me, you're not the same. Even I was hiding it to myself that I was at the point of burning out, and still people could feel it. Then the other option is I could change jobs. But I heard from my friends that it was the same everywhere. And so I chose option 3, and that was to deal differently with that. And I went to the US to follow an ontological coaching program. And why did I choose that one? It was because I was very much in my head. I'm a very rational person, like a lot of you probably are. And I was overthinking things, I was analyzing, understanding, but I couldn't change. And that's because what I just described are all actions from our rational brain, our neocortex. Well, if I wanted to change my organization, I had to change my habits if I wanted to change the culture. And habits and behaviors, they're situated in another part of the brain, and it's the part where you also have your emotions and your body functions. And so I had to get out of my head and start working and listening to my emotions, understand what my body was telling me. In fact, I had to change from within to be able to change the things around me. And by changing myself and then the rest of the people in the organization, and by managing my energy a lot and being much more focused on meaning and purpose, well, we transformed the organization. We got double-digit profit growth, 0 burnouts, and 50% less absenteeism. And so that's when I wanted to help other leaders achieve the same. what I saw during this crisis, it was more like a couple of things. You have the people who were working from home with the children, no cleaning lady, going from one online meeting to the next one with no minute to spare for themselves, and getting even more exhausted than they were before. Then you have, of course, those who are slowing down. They don't have to go 2 hours in the traffic to go to work, so they could slow down. They have another pace. And then you also have the people who were completely home without any work and started cleaning their homes. And all that with a climate of a lot of anxiety, of course, a lot of bad news. You couldn't do what you could do previously. And so a lot of people, it made them realize first, because you started missing things, you start to realize that how important these things are for you. Going out with your friends, seeing your family. There have been a lot of connections with the families in these times, even more than in normal times. You start missing your family and realizing how important that is. But also some people, they had a taste of a life that was a little bit slower. And that was great as well, because when things go slower, you can really be in the present, enjoy moments with your family, with your children. So you had a little bit of many different things. And so what we see is that people are now going back to the normal life, or a life that starts to go back to normal. And a lot of them want a new normal. And so what I would ask people to do, because this was a great period to think about what is important to you and what are your values really. And there is a nice website developed by Richard Barrett, who works with values, and he has classified values in levels of consciousness, because we all have like basic needs. We need safety and security. That's a basic need. We need sense of belonging, another basic need. And then we need self-worth. We need to be recognized for what we do. And those three needs are really basic needs. It's a little bit like the pyramid of Maslow. These are really what you need to survive or to fulfill the needs of what we call your ego. But once these needs are fulfilled, you start asking yourself, what do I really want from life? Once you have that, you want to learn a lot of things. You want to experience new things so that you can start detaching yourself from what you had to do to cover these basic needs. For instance, in school, we had to do everything that was expected from us to be recognized. That was the way to be recognized. But maybe later in life, you ask yourself the question, is that really who I want to be? And then you start really thinking about what sets me apart from the others. And you go higher on the pyramid, and you get then to make connections with others, partnerships, and then you want something better for the planet. And this is really the stages. And it's really important to know what your values are. And this period was a great moment, or now even is still a great moment to think about, what are my values?
There's probably a lot of room for the moment in terms of looking inside yourself, the introspection, thinking about what's coming next. But there's maybe a lot of anxieties and fears and questionings that are coming up in the mind of people, right? How you felt for this past 2 months? So what was the biggest fear? Were you scared or not? And so how do you actually control these emotions? How do you deal with it?
So it's nice to see what were all the emotions. And often we don't have one emotion, we have several emotions, and we can be enthusiastic and have anxiety or go from one to the next one. Mm-hmm. So emotions are part of the evolution, and we're there to protect our ego. And so again, to protect these three basic needs, the need of safety, security, belonging, and self-worth. But if you want if you just want to survive, just do what your emotion tells you and act according to those emotions. But if you want to be successful or happy, you will have to learn to reprogram yourself or your brain. First thing you need to do with your emotions that will trigger an automatic action is to stop and be aware of that emotion. So you stop and you try to notice, what do I feel? What are the sensations? And you just listen to your emotion and accept it. The first step is always to accept it, because that emotion is telling you something. And if you try to suppress it, it will always explode at a moment where you least expect it. And then once you have accepted that it's there, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with that emotion. It's just accepting that it's there and that's okay and that you're going to survive. And then if you want to change that emotion, the best way of changing emotions is to do something with your body. And with your body, you also pay attention, because if you're listening, you know, like this, well, the other person might not want to talk. So it's important to also pay attention to how your body is, so that you can really receive what the other person is telling. And also, don't try to be right, because, you know, my mother is anxious, and sometimes she reads or hears things that I think, oh my God, where does she get this from? I will not tell her, but you're wrong, and no, it's not like this, and that doesn't help. You just listen, you show that you care, you see the anxiety shift, and that person goes from resisting the change, not accepting the situation, to, okay, it's going to be okay. When everybody is exhausted, has so many things to do and so many changes, and then you have this that changes, and last week you said this and now it's this. Sometimes you have a bad mood in your organization, a negative mood, and then you can try to explain and come up with facts. I'm going to tell you a little story. At some point in my organization, I thought that we had done the turnaround, because when I started, the revenues were decreasing and I had to increase them again. And I thought we had done the turnaround, so we all had subjected a great budget. And then it's August, and I was in educational publishing, so it's the most important month of the year. And we are missing 2 million euros revenues. It was almost all our growth. And I had to announce this to my shareholders, and I didn't know yet why we were missing that. I had to announce it in the weekly sales, but I promised my boss, it was Monday, that I would come up with an answer by the Friday. And so I had organized a meeting with the people in my organization to just see what had happened and how we would fix that. Because if we wouldn't fix it, the shareholders would fix it for us, and it wouldn't be nice, because their answer was often, we're going to restructure, that's easy, profits increase, but that's not what we want, of course. So I needed everyone to find a solution. But I had this meeting organized, and I entered the meeting, and I could feel the tension. People were angry. I had, like, publishing was blaming IT was blaming publishing, sales and marketing were, everyone was blaming each other. They were blaming me, the shareholders. And so I got only anger, resentment, and I had to come up with a solution by the end of the week. And so the first thing I did was I canceled the meeting. I stopped the meeting, because my emotion was not great at that moment. I had a lot of anxiety and anger also. And I went for a run in the forest. I went to the spa. I talked with some friends. And then for the next 2 days with my management team, we decided that we would listen to everyone individually with care. And so we had one-on-one meetings with everyone, just to listen and to show that we cared. Because in fact, you often have these bad emotions because you don't feel able to deal with a situation. And when you're telling facts, you're talking to the neocortex, and that's not where change will happen. but by listening with care, even when people were blaming us, asking open questions, saying, I understand, it's not easy, their mood was shifting. And then the next 2 days, we had great meetings to find a way to fix the problem. And on Friday, we had the problem fixed and we had a solution for the shareholders. We're slowly coming out of the confinement and going back to another life. And what are the important steps to consider to continue this? And I made a little picture for this that I'd like to share, if that's okay. This is like a circle that I find you should always apply, but it's a great way to apply it now that you're getting out of the confinement. And it starts with creating the space. And that's why this confinement was a great moment for that. We have a lot of people, they are just busy all the time. They run from one thing to the next one without ever stopping. And you always have to stop and to create a space, because when you stop, then you can start analyzing things, then you can start letting your creative brain work, you can start making space for things that could emerge, like your purpose or whatever. And then what I always do is I analyze my energy level and I increase my energy. Because when you have low energy, that's when you will resist the change, that's when the negative emotions come. And remember that the emotions are what puts you into action. But that's not only that, but these emotions will color every interpretation you have. And then once you have that energy, you have created the space, you have that energy, you have to think about your purpose. What do you really want from your life? And now, not later. I see too many people thinking, oh, I'm going to work for 5 or 10 years and then I will, but no, you're living now. So what do you want now from your life? And what we've gone through is an excellent opportunity to think about that, because maybe you missed some things, or maybe you had the opportunity to try things or to slow down and you realize that's what you want from your life. So it's really important to think, what do I want? A lot of people are very busy because they don't know what they want. And when you don't know what you want, you don't know what to say yes to and what to say no to. Everything becomes a priority. And then once you know what you want, you really have to pay attention to your mindset and your beliefs. And here again, I see too many people immediately having false beliefs like it's not possible, or I cannot change that. And of course, if you believe that, you will not be able to change that because you will not even try. And if you don't even try, you will not get there. And then once you know what you want, you realize what your beliefs have, then you start acting, and imperfectly, because today everything is complex, you don't know everything, it changes constantly, and you cannot make long-term plans like you did before and only start once you have that. You have to really act imperfectly. It will not be perfect, but it's good enough for now, safe enough to continue. And then once you have put some actions in place, it's time to let go, because now you've done something, you have to see if it will work or not. And in that period, it's great to be able to let go of the results, because you're not in control. Only once you have the result, then you can see if you want to pivot or persevere. Then you create a space again. And it's really important also to build grit. It's not because you tried something once that it will work. You have to try again and again and again and again. So that's what I would do and try practicing, with the first thing being create a space for yourself. And the second thing is always manage your energy before your time. Always, because it will change your life.